Hi, beautiful Love Lives family. Welcome back to Holiday, and if you're new here, welcome home. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button, like this video, and share your thoughts in the comments. So grab your favorite blanket, maybe keep some tissues nearby, and buckle up because I'm about to take you on a journey filled with secrets, betrayal, manipulation, and one jaw-dropping twist that will leave you questioning everything you think you know about love and trust. My name is Chloe, and I used to believe in fairy tale love. I used to believe that when you found the one, everything else just fell into place. I used to think that love conquered all, that honesty was the foundation of every good relationship, and that pregnant women at gender reveal parties were safe from having their entire world destroyed. I was wrong about all of it. This is the story of how my husband's secret lover showed up at our gender reveal party and shocked not just me, but my entire understanding of the man I married, the life we built together, and the future I thought we were creating for our unborn child.
Let me take you back to where it all began, because every betrayal starts with trust, and every heartbreak begins with hope. I met Marcus Rodriguez on a Saturday evening in September at my college roommate Sarah's wedding. You know those moments in movies where time seems to slow down? Where the music gets softer and everything else fades into the background? That's exactly what happened when I saw him walking down the aisle as the best man. He was breathtaking. 6'2", broad shoulders that filled out his navy suit perfectly, dark hair styled just right, and these warm brown eyes that seemed to sparkle even from across the room. But it wasn't just his looks, though let's be honest, the man was gorgeous. It was the way he carried himself. Confident, but not arrogant. Charming, but not fake. He had this energy about him that just drew people in. During the ceremony, I caught him glancing in my direction more than once. And when our eyes met, he'd flash this boyish grin that made my stomach flutter in a way it hadn't in years. I was the maid of honor, standing there in my dusty rose dress, trying to focus on Sarah's vows, but finding myself completely distracted by this man who seemed to be having the same problem focusing on the groom's speech. The reception was where the magic really happened. The DJ had just announced the wedding party dance when Marcus approached me, extending his hand with a confidence that should have been cocky, but somehow just felt right. "I believe this dance belongs to me," he said, and his voice was warm honey, with just a hint of a smile. "I believe you're right," I replied, placing my hand in his. And oh my God, could this man dance? Not just the basic sway and step that most guys do at weddings, but really dance. He spun me, dipped me, made me feel like I was floating across that dance floor. We talked the entire time about everything and nothing. He told me he was a marketing executive for a tech startup. I told him I was a graphic designer working freelance. He made me laugh so hard I snorted, which should have been embarrassing but somehow just made him smile wider. "You have the most beautiful laugh," he said, pulling me closer as the song changed to something slower. "It's genuine. Real. I like real." We danced through 3 songs before taking a break, and even then, we didn't really take a break. We sat at the bar, talking about our favorite movies, our worst first date stories, our dreams for the future. He was attentive in a way that felt rare. He asked follow-up questions. He remembered details. When I mentioned that I'd always wanted to visit Italy, he didn't just nod and change the subject. He asked what specifically drew me there, what cities I wanted to see, whether I'd want to take cooking classes in Tuscany. "You seem like someone who would love the art scene in Florence," he said, and something about the way he said it, like he was already imagining me there, made my heart skip. The evening flew by. We danced to every slow song, shared appetizers that we probably should have been too nervous to eat, and talked until the lights came on and the staff started stacking chairs. Even then, neither of us wanted the night to end. "This might sound crazy," Marcus said as we stood in the parking lot, Sarah's wedding finally winding down around us, "but I feel like I've been looking for you my whole life." It should have been a cheesy pickup line. But the way he said it, with this vulnerability in his eyes, like he was surprised by his own honesty, it didn't feel like a line. It felt like truth. He walked me to my car, opened my door for me like a perfect gentleman, and before I got in, he kissed my hand. Actually kissed my hand, like we were in some romantic period drama. "Can I see you again?" he asked. "Soon. I'd like that," I said, trying to play it cool while my heart was doing somersaults. He called me the next morning. Not texted, called. His voice was slightly raspier than I remembered, probably from talking so much the night before, but just as warm. "Good morning, beautiful," he said. "I know it's early, but I couldn't stop thinking about you, and I was wondering, are you free for breakfast? I know this amazing little cafe that makes the best French toast in the city." Within weeks, we were inseparable. Marcus was everything I'd always wanted in a partner, but never quite believed I'd find. He was attentive without being clingy, romantic without being over the top, funny without being immature. He remembered that I was lactose intolerant and always had almond milk in his fridge. He knew I got cranky when I was hungry and would show up at my apartment with my favorite Thai food on stressful work days. He'd send me flowers just because, never roses, which he said were too predictable, but always something unique. Sunflowers because they made me smile. Peonies because they were elegant like me. Once, he sent me a single bird of paradise because he said it reminded him of how exotic and beautiful I was. Our Sunday routine became sacred. Marcus would come over to my apartment and cook for me. And I mean really cook, not just throwing together pasta and sauce, but elaborate meals that took hours to prepare. Homemade pasta with 3 different sauces. Pan-seared salmon with risotto. Once, he spent an entire day making me beef bourguignon because I'd mentioned offhandedly that I'd never had it. "Cooking for someone is an act of love," he told me, stirring something that smelled incredible on my stove. My grandmother taught me that. She said you can tell how much someone cares about you by how much effort they put into feeding you. He fed me very well. We'd spend those Sundays cooking together, talking about our weeks, planning little adventures. He introduced me to hiking, something I'd never thought I'd enjoy but found myself loving when I had his hand to hold on the trails. I introduced him to art galleries and vintage bookstores, places he'd never thought to explore but embraced with enthusiasm because they mattered to me. 6 months in, he met my family. My parents loved him immediately. My dad, who was notoriously protective and skeptical of every guy I'd ever brought home, was discussing football with Marcus within 10 minutes of meeting him. My mother, who had a sixth sense about people's character, pulled me aside after dinner. "That one's a keeper, honey," she said, squeezing my hand. "I can see the way he looks at you. That man is head over heels."
He was.
Or at least, that's what I believed. Marcus integrated into my life seamlessly. He became friends with my friends. He remembered my sister's birthday without me reminding him. He sent my mother flowers on Mother's Day even before we were engaged, with a card that said, "Thank you for raising the woman of my dreams." Everything felt perfect. Natural.
Right.
Which is probably why I didn't hesitate when he proposed. It was our 1-year anniversary, and Marcus had been acting mysterious all week. He kept asking me about my work schedule, making sure I didn't have any client meetings on Saturday afternoon. He'd been texting more than usual, but in a way that seemed excited rather than secretive. "I have a surprise plan for this weekend," he told me on Wednesday, grinning like a little boy with a secret. "Just trust me, okay?" Saturday morning, he picked me up at exactly 11 a.m., which was unusual because Marcus was more of a spontaneous, "I'll be there sometime around noon" kind of guy. But there he was, right on time, looking nervous and excited in jeans and a button-down shirt that brought out his eyes. "Where are we going?" I asked as we drove through the city. "You'll see," he said, reaching over to squeeze my hand. His palm was slightly sweaty, which should have been my first clue that something big was happening. He drove us to Riverside Park, the same place where we'd had our 3rd date, a picnic where it had started raining and we'd ended up huddled under a gazebo, sharing takeout Chinese food and laughing at how soggy our sandwiches had gotten. It was one of my favorite memories of our early relationship. "We're walking to our spot," he said, pulling a picnic basket from his trunk that I definitely hadn't seen him pack. Our spot was a little hill overlooking the river, with a perfect view of the city skyline. It was where we'd had that rain-soaked picnic, where we'd come back for several dates since then, where Marcus had first told me he loved me 4 months earlier. When we got to the top of the hill, I gasped. He'd somehow arranged for a blanket to be spread out, surrounded by at least 50 white roses. There was champagne chilling in an ice bucket, chocolate-covered strawberries, and a small speaker playing our song. At Last by Etta James, the same song we'd danced to at Sarah's wedding. Marcus, I breathed. How did you? I had some help, he said, and I turned to see him down on one knee, a small velvet box in his hands. My heart stopped. Chloe, he began, and his voice was shaking slightly. A year ago, I was just a guy who didn't believe in love at first sight. I thought all that fairy tale stuff was just stuff. And then I saw you across the dance floor, and everything I thought I knew about love changed. I was already crying. You are my best friend, my partner, my inspiration. You make me want to be better than I am. You make me laugh, you challenge me, you support me, and somehow, miraculously, you love me back. I can't imagine spending my life with anyone else. He opened the box, revealing a stunning vintage-style engagement ring with a princess-cut diamond surrounded by smaller stones. It was exactly what I would have chosen for myself. Classic but unique, elegant but not ostentatious. Chloe Marie Thompson, will you marry me? Yes, I whispered, and then louder. Yes. Of course, yes. He slipped the ring onto my finger with hands that were trembling slightly, and then he was kissing me, and I was crying happy tears, and everything felt absolutely perfect. The ring fit perfectly. Later, I'd learned that he'd conspired with my sister to find out my ring size, that he'd spent weeks researching vintage jewelers to find something he thought suited my style, that he'd driven to 3 different stores before finding the one. I love you so much, he said, holding me close as we watched the sun start to set over the river. I promise I'm going to spend the rest of my life making you this happy. And I believed him. God, I believed every word. Our engagement was everything I dreamed of. Marcus was involved in every aspect of wedding planning, which my married friends told me was unusual. Most men, according to them, showed up and said, "Whatever you want, babe," to every decision. But Marcus had opinions. He cared about the flowers, the music, the food. He wanted our wedding to be perfect because he wanted me to be happy. We spent months planning every detail. We chose a venue overlooking the lake, the same lake where he'd proposed. We selected a menu that included both of our favorite foods, his grandmother's empanada recipe and my mother's famous chocolate cake. We wrote our own vows, which made both of us cry during the rehearsal. The wedding day itself was magic. Pure, unadulterated magic. I woke up in my childhood bedroom, surrounded by my bridesmaids, feeling like the luckiest woman alive. My dress, a vintage-inspired lace gown with delicate beading, fit like it was made for me. My hair, swept up in an elegant updo with small pearl pins, looked exactly how I'd envisioned it. But the moment that still takes my breath away, even now, was seeing Marcus at the altar. When the doors opened and I started walking down the aisle on my father's arm, Marcus looked at me like I was the only person in the world. He was crying, actually crying, and mouthing, "You're so beautiful," as I approached. His vows were perfect. He talked about how I'd changed his definition of love, how I'd made him believe in forever, how he couldn't wait to build a family with me. I don't think there was a dry eye in the house. My vows were about partnership, about choosing each other every day, about building a life together that honored both our dreams and our commitment to each other. When the minister pronounced us husband and wife, Marcus kissed me like we were the only 2 people on earth. The crowd cheered, rice was thrown, despite my mother's protests about the mess, and I felt like I was floating. Our first dance was to At Last, again, and Marcus sang along softly in my ear as we swayed together. "At last, my love has come along," he whispered, "and I'm never letting you go." The reception was perfect. The food was delicious, the music was exactly what we'd wanted, and everyone we loved was there celebrating with us. Marcus gave a speech that made everyone laugh and cry, talking about how he'd never believed in soulmates until he met me. Our honeymoon in Italy was like something out of a romance novel. We spent 2 weeks exploring Rome, Florence, and the Tuscan countryside. Marcus had remembered every detail from that conversation we'd had at Sarah's wedding about wanting to visit Italy, and he'd planned the perfect itinerary. We took cooking classes in a villa outside Florence. We explored ancient ruins in Rome. We drank wine and watched sunsets from our balcony in a boutique hotel that Marcus had somehow managed to book despite it being fully reserved. "This is just the beginning," he told me one evening as we sat overlooking the rolling hills of Tuscany. "We're going to have the most amazing life together." Coming home to married life felt natural and right. We bought a house, a charming craftsman-style home with a big front porch and a backyard perfect for the family we planned to have someday. Marcus threw himself into home improvement projects with the same enthusiasm he brought to everything else. He built me a home office so I could work from home when I wanted to. He planted a garden because I'd mentioned loving fresh herbs. He installed a porch swing where we'd sit together in the evenings, planning our future. We fell into routines that felt comfortable and loving. Marcus would bring me coffee in bed every morning before he left for work. I'd pack him lunch with little notes tucked inside. We'd text throughout the day, nothing dramatic, just little check-ins and inside jokes. Friday nights were date nights, no exceptions. Sunday mornings were for sleeping in and making elaborate breakfasts together. Our first year of marriage was everything the romance novels promise, but real life rarely delivers. We traveled together, exploring new cities and making memories. We hosted dinner parties for our friends, becoming the couple that everyone looked up to. We supported each other's career goals. He encouraged me to start my own design business, and I supported his promotion to senior marketing director. We talked about the future constantly. How many kids we wanted, 2 or 3, what we'd name them. We had running lists that we'd add to randomly, where we'd want to raise them, in our current neighborhood, with good schools and parks nearby, what kind of parents we wanted to be, involved but not helicopter parents, supportive but not pushy. "I can't wait to see you pregnant," Marcus told me one evening as we walked through the baby section of Target, shopping for a shower gift for one of my coworkers. "You're going to be the most beautiful pregnant woman in the world." "I can't wait to see you as a dad," I replied, watching him examine a tiny onesie with wonder. "You're going to be amazing." 2 years into our marriage, we decided to start trying for a baby. It wasn't a decision we made lightly. We talked about it for months, making sure we were both ready financially and emotionally. Marcus researched everything, from prenatal vitamins to the best baby products to how to prepare for parenthood. He was as excited as I was, maybe more. When I missed my period in month 3 of trying, I could barely contain my excitement. I bought 3 different pregnancy tests and took them all just to be sure. 3 positive results. I planned the reveal carefully. I wrapped the positive test in a small gift box and gave it to Marcus when he came home from work. "What's this for?" he asked, looking confused but smiling. "Just open it," I said, practically bouncing with excitement. He opened the box, looked at the test, and for a moment, his face was completely blank. And then understanding dawned, and he looked at me with such pure joy that I started crying. "Are you serious?" he whispered. "We're having a baby," I said. He dropped the box, picked me up, and spun me around our kitchen, both of us crying and laughing at the same time. "We're going to be parents," he said, kissing my face all over. "Oh my God, we're going to be parents." He immediately got down on his knees and talked to my still flat belly. "Hi, baby," he said softly. "This is your daddy. I love you already, and I promise I'm going to be the best dad in the world." That night, as we lay in bed talking about baby names and nursery themes and all the exciting changes coming our way, I felt more loved and secure than I ever had in my life. "We're going to be such good parents," Marcus said, his hand resting protectively on my stomach. "The best," I agreed. I should have known it was too perfect to last. Pregnancies suited me, at least in the beginning. The morning sickness was minimal. I had that alleged pregnancy glow that everyone talks about, and Marcus was the most attentive husband-to-be a woman could ask for. He read every pregnancy book he could get his hands on, downloaded apps to track my symptoms and the baby's development, and called me throughout the day to check how I was feeling. "How's my beautiful wife and my little miracle today?" became his standard greeting when he called me during lunch breaks. He'd massage my feet when they started swelling. He'd make me ginger tea when I felt nauseous. He'd talk to my belly every night before bed, telling the baby about his day and how excited he was to meet them. It was everything I dreamed of when I imagined being pregnant with my husband's child. For the first trimester, and most of the second, everything was perfect. Better than perfect. But somewhere around month 6, things started to shift. Subtle changes that I initially attributed to normal pregnancy stress, work pressure, or just the natural adjustment of becoming parents-to-be. Marcus started working later. Not every night, and not dramatically later, but instead of coming home by 6:30 like he had for our entire relationship, he was rolling in closer to 8 p.m. several nights a week. "Big project at work," he'd explain, kissing my forehead and rubbing my now prominent belly. "Johnson wants the marketing campaign for the new product launch to be perfect, and you know how he gets when deadlines approach." It made sense. Marcus had always been ambitious, and I knew his job could be demanding. I was proud of his work ethic and his dedication to providing for our growing family. But then the business trip started. Marcus had traveled occasionally for work before, maybe once every few months for conferences or client meetings. But suddenly, he was traveling 2 or 3 times a month. Chicago for a client presentation, Atlanta for a marketing conference, Denver for a product launch. Always somewhere that required him to be gone for 2 or 3 days. "I hate leaving you," he'd say, holding me close the night before each trip. "Especially now when you're carrying our baby. But this is important for my career, for our future. I want to make sure I'm in the best position possible for when the baby comes." Again, it made sense. We were about to have a child, and financial security was important. I supported his ambition, even when it meant sleeping alone in our big bed, missing his presence and his nightly conversations with my belly. The phone calls during his trips were frequent at first. He'd call me in the morning before his meetings, text me throughout the day, and have long conversations with me in the evening about how the baby and I were doing. But gradually, those calls became shorter and less frequent. "Sorry, babe, but these client dinners are running really late," he'd text instead of calling. "I'll call you first thing in the morning." Or, "Conference is crazy busy. Miss you and the baby. Talk tonight." But tonight would come and go without a call, and I'd wake up to an apologetic text. "So sorry, fell asleep as soon as I got back to the hotel. Long day. Love you." When I mentioned feeling a bit lonely or disconnected, Marcus was immediately apologetic and attentive. "You're right, I'm sorry," he'd say, pulling me into his arms. "Work has been crazy, but that's no excuse. You and this baby are the most important things in my world. I'll do better." And he would for a while. He'd be the perfect husband again, attentive, loving, present. But then another project would come up, or another trip would be necessary, and the pattern would repeat. I started noticing other small changes too. Marcus had always been protective of his phone, but not secretively so. He'd answer texts in front of me, leave his phone on the counter while he showered, hand it to me to look up restaurants when we were deciding where to eat. But now, his phone was always face down. He'd take it with him to the bathroom. He'd step outside to take certain calls. "Who was that?" I'd ask when he came back inside after a phone conversation. "Just Johnson, going over tomorrow's presentation," he'd say, and his answer always made sense, but something felt different. The most troubling change was in our intimacy. Not just physical intimacy, though that had decreased as well, which I initially attributed to my changing body and pregnancy fatigue. But our emotional intimacy felt different too. Marcus still told me he loved me every day. He still kissed me goodbye in the morning and hello when he came home. He still put his hands on my belly and talked to the baby. But there was a distance that hadn't been there before. A distraction. Sometimes I'd catch him staring off into space with a worried expression on his face. "What are you thinking about?" I'd ask. "Nothing important. Just work stuff," he'd reply, refocusing on me with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. Our conversations, which had always flowed so naturally, started feeling slightly forced. We'd discuss practical things, doctor's appointments, baby preparations, work schedules, but the deep, meandering conversations that had characterized our relationship felt less frequent. I tried to bring up my concerns gently. "I feel like you're distracted lately," I said one evening as we sat on our porch swing, watching the sunset. "Is everything okay?" Marcus was quiet for a long moment, his hand absently stroking my hair. "I think I'm just processing becoming a father," he said finally. It's a big responsibility, you know? I want to make sure I'm ready, that I can provide everything you and the baby need. It was a reasonable explanation. Becoming a parent is a huge life change, and it made sense that Marcus might be feeling some anxiety about it. I was feeling anxiety too, about labor, about being a good mother, about how our relationship would change once the baby arrived. We're going to figure it out together, I assured him. That's what partnerships are for. I know, he said, kissing the top of my head. I love you so much, Chloe. You and this baby are everything to me. I believed him. I wanted to believe him. And most of the time, his behavior supported that belief. He still brought me coffee in bed. He still rubbed my feet when they ached. He still got excited at every ultrasound appointment and cried when we heard the baby's heartbeat. But there was something, a tension I couldn't quite identify. A feeling that Marcus was carrying a secret, wrestling with something he couldn't or wouldn't share with me. I told myself it was pregnancy hormones making me paranoid. I told myself that all couples go through adjustments when they're preparing for their first child. I told myself that Marcus loved me, that our marriage was solid, that whatever was bothering him would work itself out. I was wrong about all of it. But I wouldn't find that out until a woman in a red dress walked into our gender reveal party and destroyed everything I thought I knew about my life. By my 7th month of pregnancy, I was in full nesting mode. The nursery was painted a soft yellow. We decided to wait until the gender reveal to find out what we were having. The crib was assembled, and tiny onesies were already folded and waiting in dresser drawers. I'd been dreaming about our gender reveal party since we decided to wait to find out the sex of the baby. I wanted it to be magical, a celebration of our growing family with everyone we loved most in the world. I want balloons, I told Marcus one evening as we sat in the nursery, putting together a changing table. Lots and lots of balloons. And maybe one of those giant black balloons that we pop to reveal pink or blue confetti. Whatever makes you happy, beautiful, Marcus said, but I noticed he didn't look up from the instruction manual he was reading. You know I'm terrible at party planning. Just tell me what you need me to do. His response was typical. Marcus had always left event planning to me, claiming I was much better at it than he was. But something about his tone felt distracted, like his mind was somewhere else entirely. Are you excited? I asked, moving over to sit beside him on the floor. About finding out what we're having? That got his attention. He looked up at me with a smile that seemed genuine. Of course I'm excited. I can't wait to know if I'm having a son or a daughter. Either way, this baby is going to be so loved. He placed his hand on my belly, which had become his habit whenever we talked about the baby. Our little one was active, especially in the evenings, and right on cue, we felt a strong kick against Marcus's palm. There's my little soccer player, he said, and for a moment, everything felt normal between us. I spent the next 2 weeks planning every detail of the party. I wanted it to be perfect, not just for us, but for our families and friends who had been so supportive throughout my pregnancy. My mother helped me plan the menu, a mix of elegant finger foods and comfort food favorites. My sister designed the invitations, which featured a cute cartoon of Marcus and me with a question mark where the baby should be. We decided to hold the party in our backyard, which Marcus had been working hard to get perfect. He'd planted new flowers, power washed the deck, and even hung string lights between the trees to create ambience for photos. Despite his recent distraction, he threw himself into the physical preparations with enthusiasm. I want everything to be perfect for you, he said as he tested the string lights for the 3rd time. You deserve the perfect party. The guest list included about 40 people, our immediate families, close friends, co-workers, and neighbors we'd gotten close to since buying the house. Sarah, whose wedding had brought us together, was flying in from Seattle specifically for the party. Marcus's college roommate was driving down from Chicago. My grandmother, who rarely traveled anymore, had agreed to come because she didn't want to miss meeting her great-grandchild's gender. 3 days before the party, Marcus seemed especially anxious. I found him pacing in our bedroom, running his hands through his hair in a way that usually indicated he was stressed about something. What's wrong? I asked, settling onto our bed with some difficulty. Being 7 months pregnant made most movements require more effort than they used to. Nothing's wrong, he said quickly. I want Saturday to go perfectly. For you and the baby. It will be perfect, I assured him. Everyone we love will be there. We'll find out if we're having a son or a daughter, and we'll celebrate together. What could go wrong? Famous last words. The morning of the party, I woke up with an unusual sense of excitement and energy. Despite being in my third trimester, I felt better than I had in weeks. The morning sickness that had returned in recent weeks was completely absent, and I actually felt like eating breakfast. You look radiant, Marcus said, bringing me coffee in bed like he had every morning since we'd gotten married. Absolutely glowing. I feel good, I said, stretching carefully. I think our little one is excited about today, too. Marcus sat on the edge of the bed, his hand finding my belly as always. Are you ready to find out what we're having?
More than ready, I said.
What do you think it is? Honestly, I keep going back and forth. But I have a feeling it's a girl. A beautiful little girl who's going to look just like her mama. The way he said it, with such tenderness and love, made me feel like everything was going to be okay. Whatever had been bothering Marcus lately, whatever stress he'd been under, today we were going to celebrate our growing family and look toward the future together. I spent the morning getting ready carefully. I'd bought a special dress for the occasion, a flowing midi dress in navy blue with small white polkas that showed off my bump beautifully. I did my hair in loose waves and even put on makeup, something I'd been skipping more often as my pregnancy progressed and energy became more precious. Marcus got ready too, choosing a light blue button-down shirt that brought out his eyes and khaki pants that made him look handsome and relaxed. We looked good together, I thought, as I checked our reflection in the full-length mirror in our bedroom, like a couple ready to welcome their first child into the world. We should take a picture, I said, grabbing my phone. Our last photo as a family of two. Marcus wrapped his arms around me from behind, his hands resting on my belly, and I took several selfies of us smiling together. Looking at those photos now, I can see something in Marcus's eyes that I missed at the time. A sadness, maybe, or a guilt. But in the moment, all I saw was excitement and love. Our family started arriving around noon to help with final preparations. My mother brought the cake she'd insisted on making, a beautiful 3-layer vanilla cake with cream cheese frosting and delicate sugar flowers. My sister arrived with her camera equipment, determined to capture every moment of the reveal. Marcus's parents brought extra chairs and his father's famous homemade salsa. By 2 p.m., our backyard was transformed. Balloons in silver and white, neutral colors until the big reveal, were tied to every surface. Tables covered with white tablecloths held food and drinks. A special table near the deck held the giant black balloon that contained our secret, pink or blue confetti that would reveal our baby's gender to all of us simultaneously. Our guests began arriving right on time. Sarah squealed when she saw me, exclaiming over how beautiful I looked pregnant. Marcus's college friends congratulated him with backslaps and jokes about sleepless nights. My grandmother held court in one of the patio chairs, accepting congratulations and sharing unsolicited parenting advice with anyone who would listen. The afternoon was perfect. The weather was ideal, warm but not hot, with a gentle breeze that kept everyone comfortable. The food was delicious, the conversation was lively, and everyone seemed genuinely excited to be celebrating with us. Marcus seemed more relaxed than he had in weeks. He was in his element as a host, making sure everyone had drinks, introducing friends who hadn't met, and accepting congratulations graciously. Several times, I caught him looking at me across the yard with an expression of pure love and pride. "You look happy," my sister said, coming to stand beside me as we watched Marcus laugh with his college friends. "I am happy," I said, and I meant it. This is everything I dreamed of. At 4 p.m., we gathered everyone together for the big reveal. The DJ, a friend of ours who'd volunteered his services, started playing soft background music as Marcus and I positioned ourselves next to the giant balloon. Everyone had their cameras ready. My sister was crouched in the perfect position to capture our reactions. "Before we find out what we're having," I said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "Marcus, and I want to thank all of you for being here today. This baby is already so loved, and having all of you here to celebrate with us means the world to us. We couldn't ask for better family and friends, Marcus added, his arm around my waist. Now, let's find out if we're having a little prince or a little princess. The crowd started counting down from 5, just like we'd planned. Everyone was smiling, cameras were recording, and I felt like I was living in a perfect moment that I would treasure forever. 5. Marcus squeezed my hand, his eyes bright with excitement. 4. I could see my mother dabbing at her eyes with a tissue, already emotional. 3. My heart was racing with anticipation. 2. And then I saw her. A woman walking through our backyard gate, like she owned the place. Tall, striking, with long dark hair and wearing a fitted red dress that showed off curves and a very obvious pregnant belly. 1. But no one finished the countdown, because she was walking straight toward us, and her eyes were locked on Marcus with an intensity that made my blood run cold. The music stopped. Conversations died mid-sentence. Everyone turned to look at this woman who had just crashed our perfect moment. Marcus went completely white. I felt his hand slip from mine as every muscle in his body seemed to freeze. "You weren't going to tell her?" the woman called out, her voice carrying across our suddenly silent backyard. "Tell me what?" My brain was struggling to process what was happening. And then she got closer, and I could see her belly more clearly. She wasn't just pregnant. She was very pregnant. About as pregnant as I was. "Who is this?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper, but in the dead silence of our backyard. Everyone heard me. The woman looked directly at me, and I saw something in her eyes that looked almost like pity. "I'm sorry you have to find out this way," she said, her voice softer now but still carrying to every corner of our yard. "I'm Vanessa, and I'm Marcus's girlfriend." The words hit me like a physical blow. I actually staggered backward, and Marcus reached out to steady me, but I jerked away from his touch. That's not possible," I said, even though I was looking right at her pregnant belly that was clearly visible under her dress. "I'm pregnant too," Vanessa continued, her hand moving protectively to her stomach. "With his baby. Due in 6 weeks. The math hit me immediately. If she was due in 6 weeks, she would have gotten pregnant around the same time I did. Maybe even before. I turned to look at Marcus, waiting for him to deny it, to explain, to say something that would make this nightmare make sense. But he just stood there, his mouth opening and closing like he was trying to speak, but no words were coming out. "Marcus," I said, and my voice sounded strange to my own ears. "Tell her she's wrong. Tell everyone she's wrong." He looked at me with an expression I'd never seen before, guilt, terror, and something that looked like relief all mixed together. "Chloe, he started and then stopped. "It's not what it looks like," he finally managed to say. Vanessa let out a bitter laugh. "It's exactly what it looks like." She reached into the small purse she was carrying and pulled out a manila folder. "Since you won't tell her the truth, I will," she said, walking closer to our little table and dumping the contents of the folder across the white tablecloth. Ultrasound photos scattered across the surface. Doctor's appointment receipts with Marcus's name listed as the father. And what looked like printed text messages. I moved closer to the table, my hands shaking as I picked up one of the ultrasound photos. It was dated 2 weeks ago. The name at the top read Vanessa Martinez, and in the father information section, clear as day, Marcus Rodriguez. "He's been with both of us this whole time," Vanessa said, her voice getting stronger. "All those business trips? Those late nights at the office? He was with me." I picked up one of the printed text conversations, my eyes scanning the messages. Marcus's number, the same number that had been texting me good morning and good night for over 2 years, sending very different messages to this woman. "Miss you already, beautiful. Can't wait to see you next weekend. The baby kicked today. Our little miracle. I wish I could be there for every appointment. Soon, I promise." The messages were dated throughout my pregnancy. Recent ones. Some from just last week. I felt like I was going to throw up. Or faint. Or both. "Chloe," Marcus said, finally finding his voice. Let me explain. Explain what? I turned to face him, holding the ultrasound photo and the text messages. Explain how you're going to be a father twice in the same month? Explain how every business trip was a lie. Explain how you've been living a double life while I planned our future. My voice was getting louder with each word, and I could hear the hysteria creeping in. Our guests were still frozen, watching this disaster unfold like they were witnessing a car accident. My mother had moved closer, her hand over her mouth in shock. My sister was still holding her camera, but she'd stopped recording. I never meant for this to happen, Marcus said, taking a step toward me. Which part? I demanded. Getting her pregnant? Or getting caught? I love you, Chloe. You have to believe me. I love you, and our baby more than anything. You love me? I held up the text messages. Is this what love looks like to you? Because I must have missed that in our wedding vows. Vanessa, who had been watching this exchange, spoke up again. He told me he was getting divorced, she said quietly. He said his marriage was over, but he was waiting until after the baby was born to make it official. He said he didn't want to stress you during your pregnancy. I felt something inside me break. Not just my heart, something deeper. My ability to trust my own judgment. My faith in the life I thought I'd built. How long? I asked Marcus. How long has this been going on? He was crying now, tears streaming down his face. It started 8 months ago, when I was in Chicago for that conference. I was lonely and drinking, and it just happened. It was supposed to be a one-time thing. But it wasn't.
No.
It wasn't. And when she told me she was pregnant, he trailed off. You decided to keep both families? I finished. You thought you could just, what? Have 2 wives? 2 babies? Live 2 completely separate lives. I didn't know what to do, he said miserably. I love you both. I couldn't choose. So you chose to lie to both of us instead. And then, in the middle of this nightmare, I heard a loud pop. The gender reveal balloon had somehow gotten loose and popped against the string lights Marcus had so carefully hung. Pink confetti rained down on all of us. A girl. I was having a girl. The absurdity of it, finding out my baby's gender in the middle of discovering my husband's betrayal, made me laugh. Not a happy laugh. A broken, hysterical laugh that scared even me. A girl, I said, looking at the pink confetti scattered across the food table, across Vanessa's folder of evidence, across the ruins of my perfect party. We're having a girl. Chloe, my mother said, finally breaking free from her shock and moving toward me. Honey, let's go inside. No, I said, surprising myself with how firm my voice sounded. This is my house. My party. If anyone's leaving, it's them. I turned to face our guests, who were all still standing frozen in various states of shock and discomfort. I'm sorry you all had to witness this, I said, trying to pull together some shred of dignity. Thank you for coming to celebrate with us, but I think the party's over. People began to move then, gathering their things, murmuring quiet words of support as they passed me. Sarah hugged me tightly before she left. I'm so sorry, she whispered. If you need anything at all, call me. Marcus's parents approached cautiously. His mother had been crying. Mija, she said to me, using the pet name she'd called me since our wedding. We had no idea. We are so sorry. His father put his hand on Marcus's shoulder, but his expression was disappointed and angry. We raised you better than this, he said quietly before following his wife toward the gate. Within 20 minutes, our backyard was empty except for me, Marcus, Vanessa, and my immediate family, who had stayed to support me. I think you should leave now, my sister said to Marcus and Vanessa, her voice cold. This is my house too, Marcus said quietly. Not anymore, I said, looking at him directly for the first time since the truth had come out. Pack a bag and get out. Tonight. Chloe, please. Can we talk about this? Can we try to work through it? Work through what? You having another family? You lying to me for 8 months? You making me look like a fool in front of everyone I love? I was crying now, finally, the shock wearing off and the reality setting in. I trusted you with everything. My heart, my body, my future, my baby. And you threw it all away for what? A weekend fling that got out of hand. Vanessa stepped forward. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. I really thought you two were separated. When I realized the truth, I knew I had to tell you. You deserve to know. Thank you, I said, and I meant it. I know this couldn't have been easy for you either. She nodded, tears in her own eyes. I never wanted to hurt another woman. I've been lied to too. She turned to Marcus. I think we both know where we stand now. You need to figure out what kind of man you want to be and what kind of father you're going to be to our children. But you can't keep living this double life. And then she left, walking back through our gate and out of our lives as dramatically as she'd entered. The days that followed were a blur of pain, anger, and devastating clarity. Marcus packed his things that night like I'd asked, though he tried several times to start conversations I wasn't ready to have. Where will you go? I asked as he loaded suitcases into his car. My brother's for now, he said. Chloe, please. Give me a chance to explain everything. To try to make this right. Make it right. I stared at him. You're about to have 2 babies with 2 different women within weeks of each other. You've been lying to both of us for months. You destroyed our marriage, our family, our future. How exactly do you make that right? He didn't have an answer. The first week was the hardest. I called in sick to work and basically didn't leave our house. My sister moved in temporarily to take care of me, bringing me food I couldn't eat and tissues for tears that seemed endless. The betrayal was devastating, but what hurt almost as much was feeling like a fool. How had I missed the signs? How had I believed his excuses about work trips and late nights? How had I been so naive? You trusted your husband, my mother said when I voiced these thoughts. That's what you're supposed to do in a marriage. This isn't your fault, sweetheart. This is all on him. But it was hard not to blame myself. I replayed conversations, analyzed his behavior, looked for clues I should have caught. The increased travel, the phone secrecy, the emotional distance, it all made sense now, and I felt stupid for not seeing it sooner. Marcus tried to contact me constantly those first few weeks. Calls, texts, emails, flowers delivered to my door. I ignored most of it, but eventually read some of his messages. I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but please let me try to explain. What we had was real. My love for you is real. I made terrible choices, but my feelings for you have never been a lie. I'm willing to end things with Vanessa if you'll give me another chance. You and our baby are my priority. You always have been. I'm getting counseling. I'm trying to understand how I became someone I don't recognize. Please don't give up on us completely. The messages made me angrier, not sadder. The idea that he thought he could just end things with Vanessa, the mother of his child, showed how little he understood about the consequences of his actions. And the suggestion that I should somehow compete with her for his attention was insulting. I spoke to a lawyer. I wanted to understand my options, both for divorce proceedings and for establishing custody arrangements for our daughter. The legal implications were complicated. We owned a house together, had joint bank accounts, and I was financially dependent on his income while building my freelance business. Take your time making decisions, my lawyer advised. You don't have to file for divorce immediately if you're not ready. But you should start protecting yourself financially and documenting everything in case you decide to move forward. I opened my own bank account and started moving my freelance income into it. I changed the locks on our house. I made copies of important documents. I prepared for the possibility of being a single mother. The hardest part was telling people. Our friends and family who hadn't witnessed the gender reveal disaster had to be informed about what was happening. Each conversation was painful, and everyone had the same shocked reaction. I can't believe it, Sarah said when I called her. Marcus seemed so devoted to you. I never would have suspected this in a million years. That was what everyone said. Marcus had been so good at maintaining his image as the perfect husband that no one saw this coming, which made me feel less foolish, but also more betrayed. He'd been deceiving everyone, not just me. At my next prenatal appointment, I had to explain to my doctor why Marcus wouldn't be attending anymore. She was professional and supportive, but I could see the sympathy in her eyes. "Your stress levels need to stay as low as possible for the remainder of your pregnancy," she warned. "I know this is an incredibly difficult situation, but you need to prioritize your health and your baby's health above everything else." That became my mantra. Prioritize my baby. Whatever emotions I was feeling, whatever decisions I needed to make, whatever drama Marcus was trying to create, my daughter came first. I started seeing a therapist who specialized in infidelity and divorce. She helped me process the betrayal, the anger, and the grief of losing the future I'd planned. "You're not just mourning the end of your marriage," she explained. "You're mourning the death of the person you thought Marcus was, the life you thought you were building together, and the future you'd imagined for your family. All of that grief is valid and necessary." She also helped me start thinking about what I wanted my life to look like moving forward. "Do you want to try to save your marriage?" she asked during one session. "I don't know," I admitted. "I can't imagine trusting him again. Every time he's late, every business trip, every time he takes a phone call, I'll wonder if he's lying. Is that any way to live?" "What about co-parenting? Have you thought about what that might look like?" That was easier to answer. I want my daughter to know her father. I don't want my anger at Marcus to deprive her of a relationship with him. But I also don't want to pretend everything is okay for her sake. As my due date approached, Marcus and I had practical conversations about the birth and immediate aftermath. He wanted to be there for the delivery, and despite everything, I wanted him there too. Whatever had happened between us, this was still his daughter being born. "I'll be there as the father of our child," I told him during one of our few direct conversations. "But don't expect this to be some romantic moment that fixes everything between us. We're not a couple anymore. We're co-parents." He agreed, though I could see the hope in his eyes that somehow the birth of our daughter would bring us back together. 3 days before my due date, I was awakened at 2 a.m. by contractions. They were strong and regular, and I knew it was time. I called Marcus, despite the late hour. "It's happening," I said when he answered on the first ring. "I'll be right there," he said, and I could hear him moving around, probably throwing on clothes. My sister drove me to the hospital while Marcus met us there. It was surreal, going through labor with him beside me after everything that had happened. But when our daughter was born, all 7 pounds, 3 ounces of her, and they placed her on my chest, I forgot about our problems for a moment. She was perfect. Absolutely perfect. Dark hair like Marcus, but my nose and chin. She opened her eyes and looked right at me, and I fell in love instantly and completely. "She's beautiful," Marcus whispered, tears streaming down his face. "She's absolutely beautiful." "Emma Rose," I said, giving her the name I'd chosen. "Her name is Emma Rose." Marcus nodded, reaching out tentatively to touch her tiny hand. "Hi, Emma," he said softly. "I'm your daddy. I love you so much already." For those first few hours in the hospital, it almost felt like we were a normal family. Marcus was attentive and helpful, bringing me ice chips, adjusting my pillows, taking pictures of Emma that we both knew we'd treasure forever. But reality set in quickly. When the nurses asked about going home arrangements and who would be helping with overnight feedings, it became clear that our situation was anything but normal. "I'll stay with my sister for the first few weeks," I told them. "She's going to help me with the baby." Marcus's face fell. I hoped I could come home to help with Emma. "Your daughter can visit you," I said quietly so the nurses wouldn't overhear our conversation. "But you can't come home. Nothing has changed between us." That conversation happened on a Tuesday. On Thursday, while I was still recovering and adjusting to life with a newborn, Marcus called me with news that shattered any remaining illusions I might have had about our situation. "Vanessa went into labor last night," he said, his voice strained. "The baby came early. It's a boy."
A boy.
Marcus now had 2 children, born 4 days apart, with 2 different women. "Congratulations," I said, and I meant it. The baby wasn't at fault for his father's choices. "Chloe, I know this is complicated." "It's not complicated," I interrupted. "It's devastating. But it's also reality. You have 2 children now, with 2 women who both deserve better than what you've given us." After that phone call, I made my decision. I filed for divorce. The divorce proceedings took 8 months, during which time Marcus and I worked out custody arrangements for Emma. He would have her 2 nights a week and every other weekend. It wasn't the family structure I dreamed of, but it gave Emma a relationship with her father while allowing me to maintain my independence and sanity. Marcus also had his son, David, on a similar schedule with Vanessa. I learned this not from Marcus, but from mutual friends who occasionally updated me on his situation. Apparently, juggling 2 custody schedules was challenging, and he was struggling to balance work, 2 relationships with his children, and his attempts to rebuild his life. I didn't feel sorry for him. He had made his choices. What I focused on was building a life for Emma and me. I threw myself into my freelance design work, gradually building a client base that allowed me to work from home while caring for my daughter. My sister helped during those early months, but eventually, I found my rhythm as a single mother. Emma was an easy baby, which felt like a gift after everything I'd been through. She slept well, ate well, and had the most infectious smile. When she was awake, she was alert and curious, taking in everything around her with wide, intelligent eyes. "She looks just like you," everyone said, which made me happy. I wanted her to look like me, to be mine in a way that no one could take away or complicate. But she also had Marcus's dark hair and his long eyelashes, and sometimes I would catch expressions on her face that reminded me of him. Those moments were bittersweet. I loved that she carried parts of her father with her, but they also reminded me of everything we'd lost. Marcus was a good father during his scheduled times with Emma. He was attentive, loving, and responsible. He baby-proofed his apartment, learned how to change diapers efficiently, and sent me photos of Emma during his custody time that showed how happy they were together. "Thank you," he said to me one evening when I dropped Emma off for his weekend, "for letting me be her father, for not trying to keep me away from her because of what I did to us." "She's not a weapon," I replied. "She's a little girl who deserves to know both her parents. What happened between us doesn't change that." It was true, but it wasn't always easy. There were moments when I watched Marcus with Emma and felt a pang of sadness for what our family could have been. There were times when I had to remind myself why we weren't together, especially when he was being particularly kind or helpful. The hardest part was holidays and milestones. Emma's first Christmas, her first steps, her first words. These were moments that should have been shared as a family, but instead were carefully coordinated between 2 households. When Emma took her first steps at 10 months old, she was at Marcus's apartment. He called me immediately, excited and proud, but also apologetic. "I wish you had been here," he said. "I wish we could have seen it together." "Take a video if she does it again," I said, swallowing my disappointment. "I want to see." She did walk again, and Marcus sent me a beautiful video of Emma toddling across his living room with the biggest smile on her face. I cried watching it, partly from joy at seeing my daughter reach this milestone, and partly from sadness that our family was so fractured that we couldn't share these moments in person. But there were benefits to our situation too. I got to make decisions about Emma's daily life without having to consult or compromise with Marcus. I chose her daycare, her pediatrician, and her daily routine. I decorated her nursery exactly how I wanted it. I didn't have to share her, except for his scheduled times. She was entirely mine. And I was building a life that was entirely mine too. I joined a new moms group where I met other women who were navigating parenthood in various circumstances. Some were married, some were single by choice, some were divorced like me. We supported each other through the challenges of early motherhood and celebrated each other's successes. I also started dating again when Emma was 18 months old. It felt strange and scary at first. I hadn't been on a first date in over 4 years, and I'd never dated as a single mother. But I was lonely, and I was ready to open my heart to the possibility of love again. The first few dates were disasters. Men who said they were fine with me having a child, but clearly weren't. Men who wanted to meet Emma immediately, which felt too soon. Men who treated my motherhood like an inconvenience to work around. But then I met David, ironically, the same name as Marcus's son, at a coffee shop where I was working on a design project while Emma was at daycare. He was kind, funny, and seemed genuinely interested in getting to know me, including the fact that I was a mother. "I think it's wonderful that you're raising a daughter," he said on our second date. "It takes strength and grace to be a single parent." We took things slowly. He didn't meet Emma for 3 months, and when he finally did, it was casual and low pressure. We met at a park where Emma could play while we talked. She took to him immediately, which both thrilled and terrified me. "She likes you," I told David as we watched Emma show him her favorite slide. "I like her too," he said. "She's smart and funny, just like her mom." When Emma was 2.5, David and I moved in together. It felt like a big step, but also a natural progression. Emma called him David, rather than any kind of parental name, which felt appropriate. She had a father, even if our family situation was complicated. Marcus's reaction to my relationship was complicated too. He was polite to David when their paths crossed during custody exchanges, but I could see the jealousy and regret in his eyes. "Are you happy?" he asked me one evening when I came to pick up Emma. "Yes," I said honestly. "I am." "I'm glad," he said, though his expression suggested otherwise. "You deserve happiness." It was around this time that Marcus started dating seriously too. He'd had casual relationships since our divorce, but nothing serious while he was juggling custody of 2 young children. But he met a woman named Lisa who seemed understanding of his complicated family situation, and they began building a relationship. "Daddy has a girlfriend," Emma announced to me one evening after spending the weekend with Marcus. "That's nice, sweetheart," I said, surprised by how little the news affected me. "Is she kind to you?" "She's nice. She made pancakes," Emma reported, which was apparently the highest praise a 3-year-old could offer. It was strange how normal it all became. Emma had her routine with me and David during the week, and her routine with Marcus and Lisa on weekends. She talked about all of us equally: her mama, David, her daddy, Lisa, and occasionally her half-brother David, whom she saw sometimes at Marcus's apartment. "We have a big family," she told me once while we were looking at pictures. "Yes, we do," I agreed. "A big, complicated, loving family." Now, 3 years after that devastating gender reveal party, I can look back on that experience with perspective I didn't have at the time. The betrayal nearly destroyed me, but it also taught me lessons about love, trust, resilience, and my own strength that I might never have learned otherwise. The first lesson was about red flags. I'd ignored the subtle changes in Marcus's behavior because I trusted him completely and because I wanted to believe his explanations. But now I know that trust doesn't mean blindly accepting everything your partner tells you. Healthy relationships require transparency, and when that transparency starts to fade, it's worth having difficult conversations rather than making excuses. The late nights, the increased travel, the phone secrecy, these weren't just signs of work stress, as I'd told myself. They were signs of someone living a double life. I'm not saying every person who works late is cheating, but I am saying that dramatic changes in behavior deserve honest discussion, not assumptions. The second lesson was about my own strength. Before Marcus's betrayal, I thought I needed him to be happy, to feel complete, to be successful as a mother and a partner. But raising Emma on my own, building my career, and eventually finding love again taught me that I am capable of far more than I ever imagined. When I was standing in that backyard, watching pink confetti fall around me while my world collapsed, I felt weak and helpless. But I wasn't. I was strong enough to ask him to leave that night. I was strong enough to file for divorce when I realized our marriage couldn't be saved. I was strong enough to prioritize my daughter's well-being over my own desire to keep our family together at any cost. The third lesson was about forgiveness. Not forgiveness of Marcus. That's a process I'm still working through, and some days are better than others. But forgiveness of myself. For a long time, I blamed myself for not seeing the signs, for being naive, for somehow failing as a wife in a way that drove Marcus to seek attention elsewhere. But through therapy and time, I learned that his choices were his own. I was a loving, supportive wife who trusted her husband. Those aren't character flaws, they're the foundation of healthy relationships. The fact that Marcus violated that trust says everything about him and nothing about me. The fourth lesson was about redefining family. Emma's family doesn't look like the traditional nuclear family I'd envisioned when I was pregnant with her, but it's full of love. She has me and David, who loves her like his own daughter. She has Marcus, who is a good father despite being a terrible husband. She has Lisa, who treats her kindly. She has grandparents on both sides who adore her. She has a half-brother she's learning to know. Our family is complicated, but it works. Emma is happy, well-adjusted, and surrounded by adults who prioritize her well-being. That's what matters. The fifth lesson was about second chances, not for Marcus, but for myself. After my marriage ended, I thought I might never trust anyone enough to fall in love again. I thought Marcus had broken something in me that couldn't be repaired. But David proved me wrong. He showed me that not all men lie, that not all relationships end in betrayal, that it's possible to build something healthy and honest even after experiencing something devastating.